Brighter Shores, the newest venture from the Gower Brothers, the original creators of Runescape. I've been excitedly waiting for this game's release since I first heard about its announcement earlier this year. Designed to be a cozy, skilling, and questing-focused MMO that's separated into areas known as rooms. We got a fair amount of information about this game leading up to its release thanks to Andrew Gower's Twitter, and even now, they're currently staying very on top of things, pushing out quality of life updates and general bug fixes seemingly every few days. Today, we're gonna jump into Brighter Shores. It's still technically in early access with no set in stone full release date, but there's plenty of content to get into. Hopefully by the end of this video, you guys can be a little bit more informed about if Brighter Shores is a game you want to try in 2024. Now, before we get into it, I would just like to remind everyone that channel memberships are indeed active. If you've been a fan of my content and would like to show support, this is the best way to do so. If that's not your cup of tea, a like, a comment, a sub, those things help a bunch. And if you want to join the rest of us over in the community Discord, there's a link in the description below. Now, let's get into it. So, into the game, you have 3 separate character slots, and after a quick loading screen, you're met with a very unique character customization page. It basically acts as a giant wheel, and you can choose different outfits, hairstyles, colors, etc. And in a true old school style, you don't even choose a body type. Instead, you choose a gender. That's crazy to see in 2024. Anyway, I decided to see just how close I could get my character to look like the default RuneScape character, and to be honest, I was actually quite successful. So instead of Waydot, I went with the much more fitting Waybot, and loaded into the game. First, you speak with the captain here as you're recruited to become a guard of Hopeport, the town that you start in. Afterwards, your quest journal updates, and I took a look. Most of the user interface definitely feels early access-y in terms of design, font, and overall appearance. I think the user interface could definitely use a bit of work personally, but it functions as it's supposed to. The game is click to move and you can rotate or zoom the camera, however the camera is not 100% locked to your character, and it often feels a little floaty when you're trying to move around. You do get used to this, but there was more than a few occasions where I actually lost my character, especially when I was surrounded by other players. There was a feather and quill on the captain's desk, which I stole, and this opened up my toolbox. Apparently, this is an item that I can actually use later on. You can right-click to examine most things, sit in chairs, loot chests, etc. In fact, I just stole 74 copper from this captain's chest right in front of her. Unfortunately though, unlike RuneScape, there's no thieving skill, so I didn't get any experience for this. Like I mentioned, Brighter Shores is broken up into rooms. Each room will have different NPCs for quests or to trade with, as well as different monsters to fight or resources to gather. I decided to fight one of these combat dummies, and here is the first look at combat. You basically click on a target and select which weapon you want to use. I currently only have my fists available, and yeah, that's basically it. That's combat. As you get more weapons and learn about weaknesses and defenses, it picks up a little bit, but in a similar to RuneScape fashion, it's mostly click and wait. There's definitely a ton of room for improvement in this regard, but I don't immediately hate it. It's just kinda whatever. At this point, I was currently still in the tutorial room, so as you can tell, there's no other players around. This changes after you finish the tutorial. Anytime a quest wants you to speak with an NPC, you'll see this green chat bubble beside their name. At this point, I was about to learn magic. Now, magic works a little differently in Brighter Shores. You basically only have a few spells, and they're used for utility instead of combat or anything else. At this point in the game, the spellbook only has 8 slots, but I'm sure they plan on adding more in the future. Next, you're directed to the Portal Stone in order to learn about the Teleport Home spell. This is Brighter Shores Fast Travel. Your teleport spell will take you back here whenever you want, and it doesn't have a cooldown. He also then taught me the Sense spell, but the game never actually explained what that does, and I never actually used the spell in the entire time I played, so I'm sure it has some niche use where you could discover some things, but yeah, it didn't really apply to my playthrough. Anyway, I spent about 3 minutes looting every chest in the barracks before I told this guy to stop being so wet. Also, after I talked to him, all the chests were reset, so I stole everyone's money again. Apparently, goblins are attacking Hopeport, so I rushed outside with the other guards, and using my newly acquired sword, I fought my first actual enemy. And yeah, this is combat. Now, this was the first time I was actually able to take a glance at the professions panel. Basically, think of skills in RuneScape, these are your professions. In Hopeport, you have guard, chef, fishing, foraging, and alchemy. But each area in Brighter Shores unlocks new skills that can be leveled in those specific areas. We'll get into more on that later. Anyway, I saved a guy who looked like an old school pimp from the 70s, and his name is literally Marcus Mint. Definitely a pimp. The dialogue in this game, while not voice acted, is definitely hilarious. It's often worth reading through the scripts as you see a lot of the Gower Brothers' charm come through, similar to how some of the earlier quests in RuneScape were written back in the day. These are always enjoyable and even sometimes breaking the fourth wall in order to hit you with some comedic relief. Anyways, here you're introduced to the foraging and alchemy professions, as you need to make a potion for one of the injured soldiers. You're told to go to the beach in order to find some brown kelp, and along the way I had to fight some more goblins. Killing this goblin actually got me a guard level. Level 1. Only 499 levels to go for max. Yes, you heard that right, every profession goes up to level 500, which is insane. In my entire time playing, I think my highest level profession was around 36. This game is an absolute grind. Anyway, I made it to the beach, found the kelp, teleported back home, and used the apothecary to make a potion. I first prepped the ingredients at the preparation table, and then finished the process at the potion station. I then learned a new spell, Immunity, which allows you to run away from fights and provides immunity for a short duration. And finally, I was put into the actual game. At this point, the game asks you to provide what sort of privacy settings you want to dictate how much interaction you'll actually have with other players. It was kinda strange. It also asks you to provide your age. I tried to make myself 482 years old, however, that was ridiculous, so I had to settle for 125 years old. Now, in order to continue with the main quest, I was told I would have to get to at least level 15 guard in order to begin training range weapons, as well as a hope port total of level 60. So it seems I had to get to grinding now. Also, at this point, I was finally able to see other players. I walked into this guard sparring area and found quite a few others training on the guard NPCs. Actually, the amount of players running around was pretty staggering. Obviously, it's the starting zone of a brand new and popular MMO, so I don't know what I expected, but it's always refreshing to see such a lively world. So, every time you go into a new area, you have to discover the resources in that area, like these wallflowers. Discovering them, even if you've already discovered them in another area, allows you to then see on the map what resources are in every area. Since I was going to need level 15 guard, I decided to fight some of these crows, and actually got my first upgrade. A blue sword. There is common, rare, epic, and legendary rarities, green, blue, purple, and orange. Generally, orange will be stronger, but some weapons and armor will have level requirements which can also increase the stats. This new sword required a guard level of 1, so no problem. And by killing a few more crows, I was able to acquire some gloves as well. Anyway, next I stumbled into the shop where the shopkeeper sells an infinite amount of these resources, from baskets to potion flasks and jars. All of these can be used with different types of professions, so I bought 10 of each. They don't fill up your inventory as they go into your tool belt instead. And at this point, I was guard level 5, and unlike in RuneScape where every skill starts at 1, and you start with a total level of 20-something because of that, in Brighter Shores, every profession starts at 0, so I was only a total level of 6, still pretty far away from the 60 total level requirement to continue on with the main story quest. Now, besides main story quests, every area will also have some side quests that you can work on, and these can be majorly beneficial as they can unlock new spells, new areas, and massive upgrades to account progression. So I began working on the side quest known as the Obelisk. I talked to Commander Hackett, and a goblin stole a key to his weapon crate. I killed that goblin with literally 1 HP remaining, which was insane, but afterwards I was told I need to tune the weapons in his crate. Tuning is essentially a system where you'll receive an item that requires it to be tuned in order for it to be used. Once the item is tuned, you can then equip and use it, and you might be wondering, well, what's the point of that system? It seems rather arbitrary. Well, basically, items that you acquire in one area or episode of the game don't actually carry over to the other areas of the game. So for example, that rare blue sword I acquired earlier can be used in the Hope Port area that I'm currently in. However, later on as I make my way into Hope Forest, I'll actually have to acquire new weapons and armor to use in that area. I'm really not a fan of this system, like at all. However, tuning is a bit of their attempt to counteract this friction. If you receive an item in Hope Forest that requires tuning, you can actually bring that item to Episode 1 or Episode 3, and wherever you tune it, it's then usable in that area. So in order to tune these swords, I had to fix this obelisk by finding a missing piece, repairing said obelisk, before requesting the help of a Cryo Knight to allow us to use magic in the area. Eventually I tuned the swords and handed in the quest, receiving the sword itself, but also 10,000 guard XP, which took me all the way to level 13. Questing in Brighter Shores feels very similar to RuneScape in the sense of the length, the way the dialogue works, and even the Brighter Shores wiki has quest guides that are already identical to RuneScape quest guides. So if you're a fan of questing in RuneScape, you're probably going to enjoy the questing in Brighter Shores. Though beware, at the moment, there's only about 30 quests in the game, with more than 2/3 of them being taken up by the main story. Now, as you level up certain skills, the actual level of monsters or resources in an area may change. Now that I was a guard level of 13, I could fight level 8 goblins here instead of level 0. You can always right-click on a mob or a resource in an area to select a lower level version, but the version you'll see available to you will always be the highest level you have unlocked. Because of that, I actually died to one of these crows who are now level 16. Death in Brighter Shores has no real penalty besides the Walk of Shame, as you slowly amble your way back to wherever you were to continue doing what you were doing. Anyway, apparently to do the next quest, I was going to need level 25 fishing. I thought to myself, surely if there are 500 levels available for every profession, level 25 should only take an hour at the most. So I bought myself a fishing spear, which was going to be required for some low-level fishing. This was 12 silver, but I had 16 saved up, so while it was the majority of my money, I figured it was worth it. And I began leveling my fishing. As you can see, lots of other people had the same idea. You start with these level 0 flounders on the beach, and one by one you right-click them and select catch. In every fishing area in Hopeport, there are 6 spawns available, and if you're quick, you'll usually be waiting for the last one to respawn for a few seconds. I'm not joking, this is completely non-AFK, and it's one of the most monotonous tasks I've ever participated in. But luckily, about every 2 levels, you're going to get an upgrade to a higher level fish that you can catch, which will require you to change areas. Within a few minutes, I was finally level 2, and this meant I could catch eels. Nice. I tried to go to the kitchen in order to cook the fish that I caught, thinking it would work similarly to Runescape, but it turns out I would need a higher cooking level. We'll get into cooking in a bit, but it turns out there's a fishmonger vendor in which you can sell all the fish that you catch, and fishing did end up being quite profitable for me. So next up was the eel area by this bridge. There are 3 eels that spawn on each side, and yeah, I caught those until I was level 4, and afterwards made it to the pufferfish area and caught those to level 6. Afterwards I went back to the flounder area, and now there were level 6 flounders. I caught those until I was level 8, then I decided to take a break until the next day, where I caught level 8 eels until level 10, and so on and so on. Level 12, level 14, about an hour of fishing later, I was finally level 20. Still 5 levels away from the requirement for the quest. At this point, I was told to buy a fishing rod, which was going to be required for passive fishing. The fishing rod was 72 silver, which was insanity, but luckily, like I said, fishing had been pretty profitable. However, when I went to attempt the passive fishing, it turns out I was going to need to unlock this method of fishing through a system known as knowledge. Knowledge works like this. Essentially, once you reach level 20 within a skill, you begin acquiring knowledge. It's a percentage-based meter, and you can apply knowledge points in a few ways. First of all, you can use it to unlock passive skilling areas or resources for that skill, or you can use knowledge and trade it for experience or money. Once you have 2 skills beyond level 20, you can actually use the knowledge you acquire to purchase XP in another skill. So, for example, if my guard skill was also level 20 and I acquired a knowledge point by fishing, I could then use that knowledge point to purchase guard XP. It's basically a way to allow you to train other skills that you might dislike by training a skill that you actually do like, albeit at a much slower rate. So I acquired the knowledge point, I got myself some bait, and I went to the passive fishing spot. The interesting thing with passives in Brighter Shores is that you can literally log out and your character will continue training here until you log back in, upon which you'll receive a huge chunk of XP. My first impressions of this were pretty lackluster. I figured this is just going to become an idle game. However, the experience you get from passive activities is ridiculously slow. Like, with fishing here, we're talking about probably a 98% decrease in XP per hour compared to active fishing. I was hoping to AFK my way through the last 5 fishing levels required, but this is more of some activity you just set for your character anytime you know you're going to log out. So, back to the grind. I put all future knowledge points into fishing XP to speed up the process. Around level 22, I even upgraded my spear, which was not cheap, 126 silver. However, it gave me a 5% increase in experience gained. I finally got to level 24, only 21,000 more XP to go, meaning I only had to catch about 210 more fish. Great. All in all, I want to say getting to level 25 fishing took me about 4 hours in total. Brighter Shores is a grind fest, and although I look stressed in this clip, that's actually a huge positive for me. I grew up on Runescape, what can I say? I love games with extremely long grinds where you get that massive sense of accomplishment from finally getting the levels you need. It's super satisfying. But the reason I was training so hard to get to level 25 fishing was to complete the second side quest in the Hopeport area. I now had all the requirements, and during one part of this quest, I had to go get a haircut as a bald man. During the animation, you can even see bits of my hair flying off my head as this man just ripped into my skin with his scissors. But it all culminated in a fight against a level 30, which my measly guard level of 13 was just not going to be able to handle. So I did all that fishing for essentially nothing, as I would now have to grind guard levels to be able to continue on with this quest. I would love to tell you all that I came back and finished this quest, but honestly at this point I decided to just work on the main quest again. And as a reminder, I needed a total level of 60 as well as a guard level of 15 to move forward. When I got the guard requirement, I was a total level of 44, so I needed to find some other skills to get the remaining 16 levels. And that's when I decided to dive into cooking. Basically, cooking is very easy, especially to start off. You simply buy ingredients you might need for whatever recipe from a vendor directly outside of the cooking area. Then you go inside, create the recipe, and sell the cooked food to the chef within the area for a profit. Rinse and repeat. Sometimes you'll need to gather ingredients like eels or other ingredients through foraging, and then mix those ingredients with things you'll buy from the vendor. I actually found cooking to be pretty chill and relaxing, and knowing that I was profiting the entire time was really nice. About an hour of a mix of foraging, and by getting my cooking to level 8, I finally acquired a home port total level of 60, and was able to push forward with the main quest. So, completing the main story quest gave me access to Hope Forest, or Episode 2, the next area, as well as 16,000 guard XP, which took me to guard level 20. I did try to kill that level 30 enemy for the side quest again, and yeah, no bueno. So I made my way into Hope Forest. Now, I didn't actually realize this at the time, but this unlocked 4 completely new professions, including Scout, Gatherer, Woodcutter, and Carpentry. And then I also got fairly annoyed, as though my guard level was 20 in Hopeport, my Scout level was 0 in Hope Forest. Scout being the combat skill in the new area. And obviously none of my equipment from the previous episode could be used in Hope Forest. I don't really mind professions and skills not transferring over, but this complete reset of player power was jarring, to say the least. It feels very silly in a game to get stronger, get better armor and weapons, and start dealing more damage, and it makes no sense for that to completely reset when you enter into a new area. This is probably my biggest con against the entire game, is the feeling of player power decreasing as you actually progress forward. If I'm dealing 20 damage per hit in one area, I don't want to then go to a new area and only be able to deal 5 damage. It's just not a fun gameplay mechanic. So in order to continue with the main story, I had to kill this stag. I decided to train on some of these lower leveled outlaws, hoping at least they would drop me gear and weapons that I could use in Hope Forest. And then I died, fighting a level 0. Oh boy. But I eventually got to Scout level 2, I continued grinding, I even got this rare bow, and range weapons work rather interestingly in Brighter Shores. Basically, you can attack something from a distance, but every time you enter into combat, you'll only have a certain amount of ammo or projectiles. So, for example, this bow had 4 arrows that I could use once in every combat scenario, before I'd have to switch to a melee weapon. Around Scout level 6, after acquiring lots of Hope Forest gear, I was finally able to take down the stag, and afterwards, from following the main quest, I was led into a cave. And this is actually a really important part of character progression, as you now choose a faction, which is sort of a de facto class. This is super unique. I've never played a game where essentially you pick your class after already participating in about 8 hours of gameplay. There are 3 options currently available: Cryo Knight, Guardian, and Hammer Mage, which creates a sort of unique trinity system similar to the melee range magic system in Runescape. But instead, Cryo Knights are strong against Guardians, Guardians are strong against Hammer Mages, and Hammer Mages are strong against Cryo Knights. Cryos use metal armor through blacksmithing, Guardians use bone armor through bonewright, and Hammer Mages use stone armor through stone masonry, which are all professions that'll be available in later episodes and areas. I didn't have to think too long about this decision, honestly. Hammer Mage was my nickname in high school, so it seemed the obvious choice. Now, this doesn't result in any new skills or increase in passive abilities, it basically just dictates certain types of armor and weapons that you'll be able to utilize in the future. Anyway, apparently to continue the main quest, I needed level 8 woodcutting, so I found where to purchase a saw and began sawing trees, starting with ash trees. Moving on to pine trees at level 4, which needed a hatchet that I had to purchase. And a little while later, I got 8 woodcutting for the quest. While leveling my scout a bit more, I came across a rare two-handed axe, but unfortunately it was for Cryo Knights only, so I couldn't use it. At this point in the main story quest, we had found the source of corruption within Hope Forest, and I had to bring a select few items back to this giant crystal. One of those items included some honey, which was being protected by a level 20 bear. So, more scout training it is. Around scout level 14, I received my first legendary item, a two-handed hammer, which did significantly more damage than what I was using previously. And finally, around level 18, I decided to attempt my hand at the bear fight. It was not easy. He had an AoE attack you had to avoid. However, I found that by utilizing the entire area, I was able to stand pretty far away from him at times, and using a couple of potions I made with alchemy, I eventually got him down. Now, in a similar fashion to the previous episode, you're now given a couple of level requirements in order to continue on with the main story. These included 57 total levels, of which 31 of them needed to be in Hope Forest. At this point, I took a look at some of the other side quests and found out that the Spider's Nest quest actually unlocks a banking system, which would be massive for character progression, basically allowing you to access storage points on the map, where you can deposit any of the resources you might be gathering. The quest Spider's Nest, however, had some pretty hefty requirements, including not only 32 carpentry, which I hadn't even really attempted yet, as well as 20 woodcutting. Also, the ability to fend off 2 level 35 spiders. I found the carpentry area after some aimless running around the map, and here you can take unprocessed logs, split them into 2 planks, and then depending on the type of wood you're using, you can further process them into poles or shafts or other phallic objects. I got my carpentry to level 7, around level 16 woodcutting I had to buy a 2-person saw, as yew trees are apparently a tree you can cut with a partner, though I don't really understand the benefit as they cut down pretty fast as is. Around level 16 carpentry, I came across my first rugged log variety. These logs I think can be acquired from the same type of tree as a sort of rare drop, however you can also purchase them at the vendor near the carpentry area. So instead of having to chop all my own logs, from this point forward I could just buy logs from this vendor, process them, and sell them. You take a small hit to profits, however this is completely worth it because trust me, 32 carpentry takes forever. I spent probably 10 hours in this place just cutting wood. It was so worth it, however. I finally got to level 32 carpentry, and I was almost ready to take on the Spider's Nest quest. But first we're gonna need level 30 scout. Along the way I got this legendary range weapon, which was an absolute game changer. I spent a long time farming these bears and ended up having an almost completely epic or legendary setup. I even passively fought some of these boars overnight when I went to sleep, which resulted in me getting 20,000 XP, or 1 scout level. But I finally had all the requirements for the quest, I took out the 2 spiders, and gained access to the spell, which allows me to bank items from multiple points across the map. Awesome. And finally, I was ready to move forwards into episode 3. And paywall. It turns out, in typical RuneScape fashion, you need a premium membership to access the rest of the game. I actually do plan on buying this membership, as although the game started a little slow for me, I really became addicted in a way that only a RuneScape sort of skilling system can make me addicted. So if you guys want to see more from me on Brighter Shores and want to see the rest of the game, please leave a comment letting me know. But here are my final thoughts on this first impression. Basically, this game is about as cozy as it gets. It has excessively long grinds with a fairly calming and ambient graphic style that allows you to just settle in and get leveling. The questing is very similar to RuneScape and retains all of that charm which you might come to expect from the Gower Brothers' writing. It's often hilarious and breaks the fourth wall unexpectedly, which is always good for a quick exhale. I'll be honest though, in the first few hours of playing the game, I was not really enjoying myself. The combat was bland, the skilling was bland, but as I set goals for myself and continued to adventure further, I found myself having more and more fun. I woke up the one day completely excited to spend my entire day leveling carpentry. It's really the only other MMO I've ever played that actually resembled what it feels like to play RuneScape, which is super unsurprising given its creators. So here's my real short and just genuine take. If you enjoy RuneScape, you're gonna love Brighter Shores as well. If you don't enjoy RuneScape, you probably won't love Brighter Shores. I can't make it any more simple than that. Anyway, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who made it to the end of the video. Don't forget a like, a comment, a sub. Those things help a bunch, but I'll catch you all in the next one. Later.